Metallica, here they come, the kings of metal.
So fucking what?
Hey everybody, I'm Lizzie.
And I'm Joe. We're from the band Hailstorm.
And you're listening to Middle Up Your Podcast.
We
Welcome to Middle Up Your Podcast. I'm Ethan Luck.
And I'm Clint Wells.
This is episode 141, and this is an exclusive interview that my good friend Clint Wells here, did with Chad Z, who is James Hetfield's guitar tech. I unfortunately was not able to be a part of the interview due to prior obligations with some session work, but Clint knocked it out of the park. I listened to the whole interview, and it kicks ass, dude.
Thanks, man. Well, it only kicks ass because of Chad. I mean, he was super cool. Chad and I have been sort of chatting off and on since around January. I don't remember how we got connected, but I believe it might have been Shane Obershaw, maybe, who's the drummer for the tribute band One. He knows a lot of the tech, the crew and tech world in the Metallica camp. And it was funny because I was emailing him the week of the Nashville show, and maybe even trying to get him to come to the party or something.
Right.
Which some Metallica crew did come to the party.
Yeah.
But I remember we were emailing all the day of the Nashville show, and then Wes, our good buddy Wes Fisk, was able to get me and Paul a tour of sort of the backstage of Bridgestone Arena in the Metallica world, and that's where I got to meet Chad.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then later when we went to the show, we were going into the friends and family kind of guest room.
Yeah.
And I ran into Chad again. I was like, dude, I swear to God, I am not stalking you, bro. I'm so sorry.
Do not be afraid.
So that's kind of where we met Chad, and he always seemed real lovely. And if you've seen any of the Rig Rundown episodes, they did a Rig Rundown around the World Magnetic time, but then they've also just been doing their own.
Right.
And we talk about that in the interview where he basically talks about how they just wanted to make sure they did it right.
Well,
so
and just get all the correct info out there.
Get the correct info out there. And all that info changes a lot, too. I mean, I think in the World Wired era of 08 and 09, they were playing with amps, real amps. Now they're on fractals. We're going to hear all about that. He was super generous and fun to talk to, an interesting guy.
Yeah.
Musically. And
I had a blast listening to it. Like, just stepping for that one episode, stepping out of the podcast and just hearing it. It was a really fun listen. He had so much great stuff to say about his career, working with, like the Breeders and the Hole and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Like awesome, a lot of surprising stuff.
Yep.
I didn't know he was a drummer.
Right.
All that stuff. So.
Right. And so the patrons have been able to hear this interview for a few weeks since it's been up. And so this is one of the benefits you have if you want to become a patron. You're going to hear a commercial for it later. It's patreon.com/metalupyourpodcast. That's kind of where the diehard Metal Up Your Podcast family has been camping out for the last couple of years. And, the show has value, I believe. We take a lot of our personal time in between the insanity of touring and writing songs and doing session work in town to try to make sure that we deliver an episode every Monday, which we have faithfully done.
Faithfully.
As Journey would say. And today's no different. I'm excited. The feedback we've gotten from the patrons about Chad's interview has been super positive.
Yeah.
He's such a cool dude, a family man, a Southern boy, lives here in the South, alongside us. So I'm excited for everyone to hear it. We're going to knock out a few housekeeping things before. Like I said, iTunes review, Patreon, and we're going to just leave that at that.
That's
the socials, we're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You know what that crap
You know where
is.
we are. You can find us.
Now, the best way to get a hold of us, of course, is metalupyourpodcastshow@gmail.com. We like to dip in with the Metal Up Your Podcast family and read a handful of these emails per episode.
That's right.
We're going to do it here no differently.
Yeah.
Even though we're HQ2, which it's nice to see you in person
Great
again.
to see you as well.
I feel like we're at our best when we can look each other in the eye and when we can make out after.
Of course, we don't record that part of it, but it does. I mean, I think it does up the quality a bit. Not a bit, a lot. We've done tons of remote episodes in the past when I was still touring with Kings, and so it's always a joy to come back into the same room, whether it's HQ1 or 2 or 3 or 4. It's just I think it's our interactions are better, and I don't know. I
do think the next episode we all do together will be at HQ4 with Paul Moak.
Yes.
Reviewing S&M2.
Right. Yeah.
I'm going to see it by myself on the 9th. You and Paul are going together on the 13th because I'll be on the road.
Sometime
So-
that next week, we'll get together and we'll discuss it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Heck
and
yeah.
Again, we want to send nothing but love to James Hetfield on his recovery and his treatment. And we don't really know a lot of details about that still.
Right.
But nothing but love to,
course,
to
yeah.
our beloved Papa Head out there.
Oh, yeah.
So let's go to the email corner and read a few emails, and then we'll talk to our friend Chad.
The email corner. All right, our first email is from Cody Farm. He says, "I'm still burning my way through the never of all podcasts you guys have done. The never of all podcasts.
Wow. Maybe that's what we should have called it. Wow. Well, he's saying through the never.
Yeah, through the never of all podcasts. It's just I don't know. It sounds. Do we need to rethink this entire podcast?
Maybe we need to rethink the entire project, delete everything we've done, and start over
Right.
with our interview with Chad.
Yeah, anyways, he goes on to say, segment idea, if you haven't already done so, Metallica influences. It would be cool if you guys reviewed the bands that influenced Metallica, like Merciful Fate. I really appreciate your guys' opinions. I've learned a lot about music in general because of you and your insight. P.S. I've been listening to Merciful Fate. They are good, but my God, that high-pitched Mickey Mouse voice makes me church house giggle. Sounds like an evil Mickey Mouse screaming about Satan.
Awesome.
Sounds right up Clint's alley.
Yeah, I'm in.
That would be fun. We have touched on some stuff. I know I played a couple. I played a Thin Lizzy song in my last radio episode. We've played little clips here and there of Saxton and bands like that.
Saxon.
Saxon, yeah, that's right.
Saxton is Bill
Saxton.
Paxton's Saxon tribute band.
That's
that
right.
he had before he passed
That's
away.
right. He plays soprano sax.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be cool to do some Judas Priest, of course, Sabbath, and
Yeah.
Lizzy. We would have to get it all together. Or we could just do similar to what we do with the Explore the Big Four series, where we listen to Screaming for Vengeance or
Crest of the Knave.
Crest of the. Hey, man, we did listen to a little bit of Crest of the
We
Knave,
did, yeah.
and it was pretty good.
Yeah, wasn't bad.
I got it on vinyl now.
I know.
Thanks for the idea, Cody. Cody's a patron, by the way, so thank you for supporting the show and
Thanks.
for giving us some good ideas for the future. Chris Howe writes in, "Hey guys, wanted to drop a line and say, hey, I've been listening to you guys for about 2 weeks now, and I have to say it has been a true homecoming for me.
Ooh.
I started a new job in my commute so early in the morning that I needed something to listen to, and I found out about the podcast. He says, I know a little bit late to the party, so I searched for Metallica, and there you guys were.
Oh, so he's new to podcasting in general.
Right,
Welcome,
yeah.
dude, welcome to the magical world of it. There's a lot out there.
One listen, and I was hooked. Now I listen in my car on my 2-hour commute in the morning, all day at work, and have you guys in my ear again for my 2-hour
Wow.
drive home. Wow.
4 hours of us every day.
Chris, I'm sorry, dude.
Hey, we can tell you some episodes to skip if you want.
He says, I dig you guys so much, and my first paycheck came in, and I'm a patron and will be for life.
Wow.
Holy shit, man.
That's cool.
Thanks, Chris.
So even after the podcast is done, you're still going to do it? That's amazing. For life. You said for life. Not our words.
Sorry, Chris. Yeah, we're going to have to hold you to that. We'll get our metal lawyer.
This
Nick.
is our last episode.
We'll get Nick Roller to put that in a will or something. He says, I grew up and still live in the Bay Area and have been a Metallica fan since I was 10 when my cousin blasted Injustice for All for me for the first time. One listen, and it was all she wrote from that point. Metallica's gotten me through so much in my life, from my time away from home when I was in the military to every struggling period life has tossed at me. Same for me.
Yeah, man.
Minus I didn't go to the military, but I would describe Metallica's music as very similar for me.
Absolutely.
Metallica has even shown up in my personal life, as my fiance and I are huge fans and have been to 3 shows in the last 2.5 years, from the benefit concert for the Northern California fires to the Hardwired show in Sacramento, and most recently S&M 2. There's so much a part of our lives that our first dance at our wedding will be to Nothing Else Matters. Beautiful.
Ooh, gorgeous.
Your shows have given me a place to hear and listen to conversation about this band that I haven't had since my junior high days, when it was quote-unquote the rockers
Yeah.
against the quote-unquote rappers, fighting for the use of the school stereo at lunchtime. Holy shit. I'm imagining in the Beat It video where they're tape their hands together or
Right,
whatever,
totally.
the Warriors
pool
or
hall.
whatever.
Yeah.
Where more times than not, us rockers would win, and I would blast the Binge and Purge renditions of my favorite songs where I bleeped out James's F-bombs when I recorded mixtapes in my room. Beep. Just saying beep.
Yeah. Beep.
He says, I know this has been long, so I'll wrap up saying Load and Reload are the shit. For me, Reload edges it out by Load a bit, so I'm with you, Clint. That's awesome. Good to hear. Keep up the good work. As many others have said, you've given me a reason to look forward to Mondays. Thank you, Chris. P.S. I'm not a musician, but the info you both put out about instruments and tuning and recording process has really interested me and pushed me to want to learn how to play guitar. So thank you for that
Oh,
influence.
that's cool.
Well, dude, first of all, what an amazing compliment.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just changing lives over here, Ethan.
No big deal. Jeez.
But you're really going to love this talk with Chad because we obviously get into a lot of the minutia of the guitar side of things with James.
Yeah. And if you're only 2 weeks in, I mean, I'm not sure what episode you're on, but
Well, think about it. He listens 4 hours a day on his commute and then all day at work. So 2 weeks might
so he's
be...
on episode like 4, 5.
I mean, shit, dude. He might.
That's a lot of content.
He might be up in a year and a half or 2 of them.
Yeah.
2 years in.
Wow, that's crazy.
What were you going to say though?
Oh no, I was just curious as to where he is in
Oh,
the show
okay,
exactly.
gotcha,
'Cause
yeah.
He's only 2 weeks.
He's probably
in,
the
but
part where we're still chewing ice.
we're probably still crunching on ice. Maybe Torben's for sure been introduced at that point. Our next email is from Chris Kakamis.
Kakamis.
Hello, Clint, Ethan, Dave, Hulkster, Joyce, Papa, and Outlaw Torben.
They all say hello from inside
They
of our
do,
heads.
yeah, they do. What's up, brother? Chris from the Bass Channel here. I just wanted to share with you the full And Justice for All bass cover video. My good friend John Dubois.
Josh.
That's a
Yosh. Yoshi.
Yosh. Why did I say John?
Yoshi Dubois.
Yoshi Dubois. Learned and played every song on the album, and I shot and edited and mixed it. Maybe you guys could do a little listen through or give a shout out or something. This is the bass channel that they use when you're Lunar Satan tracks on.
Yeah, so this is Chris. He's been on the show before. He did a Metal Tales for Fresno. He lives in California. And then he also came on the Trujillo bass episode. He came on at the end to do, I think, like a Sweet 16, a Metal Madness.
Oh, yeah.
Revolving the bass, like bass riffs or something.
Sure.
Super cool dude. And,
Yeah.
And so let me say this too. Chris is the dude who is re-recording all of my shitty bass parts for the Lunar Satan record and making them legitimate.
Cool.
So he's sort of a de facto studio member of my one-man satanic space odyssey project, Lunar Satan. So that's kind of how we know Chris. And he has a YouTube channel that's really popular called The Bass Channel.
Yeah, it's awesome.
We can either put a link in the description or you can find it. It's called The Bass Channel.
Yeah, a lot of like gear reviews and stuff like that.
And what he's sending this here is they've done one of there's several of these now where whether it's Injustice for Jason and bass, whatever the bass for all,
Right, yeah.
where people have been sort of putting bass back in. But I know that with Chris at the helm and sort of making sure that it's legit, that it's pretty good. So
Theirs sounds pretty damn good.
we've dialed up Blackened. We're going to listen to it and sort of talk through it just to give you a little taste. You can go find the rest of it yourselves. But he does say it'd be cool to get the Metal Up Your Podcast stamp of approval.
Wow.
He says if we get the video up to 1 million views, we're giving the bass that was used in the video away to a subscriber,
that's
which
cool.
is pretty cool.
That's awesome. Give him back.
Hope you guys enjoy. Can't wait to get my Lunar Satan vinyl. So I've got this dialed up here, so we're going to check it out. Again, It's on YouTube. It's called The Bass Channel.
The Bass Channel. Yeah, and this dude's a great player too. I've watched this.
I haven't seen it yet.
Did you know that that's in reverse?
I heard that they played it and then they reversed it.
Yeah, that's what I've heard too.
It's one of the coolest intros of all time.
I know.
It's a 2005 Warwick Corvette Standard. You know the drums turn around here. When
You know that. I will say right off the bat, I love how they have the bass mixed. Most of these ones on YouTube, the bass is so damn loud, it just isn't. It's unenjoyable.
And let it be known too, this dude is doing this Cliff style
Yeah.
with fingers.
Fingers.
It's fun.
Yeah. I'm having a great time.
I'm having a great time.
Having a blast doing this.
To begin whipping down solitaire.
Looking. Oh,
Gray is my favorite color. I can't believe we had the same
I
idea at the
know.
same time, dude. That's
I
funny.
can believe it, actually.
Yeah, I can believe it too.
This is shot really well.
Yeah, man.
It looks good.
I think the people who want to hear it this way are going to love the sound, but it's fun to watch.
Yeah.
This dude's wearing like an OG Justice shirt.
Yep.
Yoshi DuBois.
That dude's right hand is no joke, man. Dig it.
This sounds really good, man.
It does.
Shit. I'd be curious to know if the tab or whatever is culled from live performances.
Maybe so. Or maybe it was the thing when they did it. It got to Jason. Can you approve this? Or I don't know.
So they're at 109,000 views now. So 900,000 more, they'll
That's
give the
it.
bass away.
Yeah. Yeah, there's little tiny passing notes in there that he's doing that I wouldn't really know were there.
Exactly.
Unless I saw the tab or saw Jason playing it.
That's what I'm saying. Maybe they watch like Seattle '89.
Or maybe Jason's just behind the camera and just letting them know what's right and wrong.
Jason directed this.
Right.
Jason's on YouTube now. Oh, this is fun to watch.
Yeah.
The rhythm to this song is really exciting. You would never know it because the lead obviously poke out, but
Right. It's cool. It's like
Cool timing.
One measure in 6, one in 7.
yep. At least we can agree on that.
It's actually 13.
It's kind of like To Live Is to Die.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That main riff.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's one of Kirk's best solos, man.
100%. Get
Go.
it.
Look how weird this rhythm is.
This fucking part's no joke.
chorus.
Yeah, woo!
It's nuts, man.
He's a great bass player.
Fuck yeah.
Wow.
That's awesome. All right, well,
Yeah. Well, guess what? You've-
stamp of approval achieved.
Yeah. Attention, attention. The bass channel pleases us.
Muchly does it please me to announce, yes, that the bass on this bass channel is very nice.
Henceforth.
Henceforth we shall pay the bass channel 100 shillings. I trust.
And 900,000 views.
Mustly we deliver 900,000 views to the bass channel, yes.
For dost thou hath descend into the portal to listen to this. I don't know what that meant, but
I consider it of utmost importance.
importance.
All right, well, the bass channel, Chris Kakamis, the dude playing it, who we've now dubbed Yoshi DuBois. Here's the deal, though, like fun seeing there's stuff that I just saw just now that I never really would have thought about the rhythmic underpinnings of that song. Chris did the same thing for my Lunar Satan jams. You know, I kind of gave him my stems as a template. I think my bass playing on the demo is actually pretty dope, but he just made it real.
Yeah.
And some of his choices are things I never would have thought of. You know,
Right.
just delivered the song into a
Yeah,
a
that's-
satanic realness.
That's kind of a fun thing about remotely recording, sending stems to somebody. It's like, hey, here's the key. Here's kind of what I did. But do your own thing.
Right.
Like, put some of your flavor in there.
Well, and I got to say, too, like Brian King of Reality Suite playing the drums on it, too.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you get good people around you, it's in your best interest to sort of set them free.
Right, yeah.
You and I have done that in sessions a million times. I love being produced. I love when Paul Moak, some of my fondest memories of recording are with Paul Moak on a Matthew Mayfield record.
Oh, yeah.
And he'll Paul is a very intense isn't the right word, but he's very involved, and he cares a lot about details on records, which is why he's such a great producer. However, he's also very cool about letting you just be yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
The solo I did for your record, which is kind of a one take, he just told me to do my thing,
Yeah.
So anyway, all that to say,
I'll just say, I mean, great job. What were you dubbing the bass player? What's his name?
Yoshi Dubois.
Okay. Well, he's a fantastic
Which
player,
is
man.
by the way, his rap name, not now. Like when he's opening for Post Malone this summer.
Hell yeah.
Yoshi Dubois.
That's awesome.
Thanks, Chris. Another Chris Caldwell writes in, hey, guys, wanted to make sure you heard this on the Jim Brewer podcast. In the first 5 minutes, he talks a little bit about being on tour with Metallica and what it meant to him. The rest of the show is good, too, but at least listen to the first 5 minutes. It's episode 107. Love the show, and thanks for all the work you guys put into it. Chris, I have not heard that.
I haven't either.
Jim Brewer's dead to me currently because he said he would come on the show, and he said he would come to our party, and he didn't either.
He didn't, yeah. Who's Jim Brewer?
Now, of course, it's because he's mega talented and super busy,
Yeah,
and,
of course.
and he's a family man himself, and he's on tour, and he has obligations that are more important than our fledgling show.
That's right.
However, having said all of that, I would once again like to reiterate, Jim, dead to me. Sorry.
And if you want to be resurrected, come on the show.
We're welcome back on the show.
Yeah.
Until then, dead to me. Sorry.
Our last email is from Andy Sparrow. Last email?
Yes, this is the last
email. Andy Sparrow says, up late tonight and thinking of when I first got to see Metallica as a midway down the lineup, Donington, 1985 through to the last month in San Francisco with the Amazing Spectacular that was S&M 2. If that was the end, what a journey. We will have to see, of course, we're talking about James and the rehab stuff. We'll have to see Metallica are a different band from the early 2000s, more of a single unit, more heart and family. But James is almost 20 years older. Hope it's not the end, but if it is, what a ride. I don't think it's the end.
No.
But hypothetically speaking, if it were the end, he's correct in saying, yes, what a fucking ride. You got 10 great records. Nine great records, amazing live content, documentaries.
Oh, yeah.
They've given us so much. We were lucky as fans to have gotten all this stuff.
One of
over
the greatest
years,
bands of all time, and one of the most generous bands of all time in what they've given us as fans.
Yeah.
And just kind of inspired us in ways beyond music. The way
Absolutely,
that their charitable donations, they're all within My Hands Foundation stuff, and the way that they've carried themselves through all sorts of shit.
Yeah.
And with James getting clean the first time around.
Right.
So
I
I don't,
don't-
we talked about this a lot in our last episode. I don't think by any chance this is the end of Metallica.
Right. I'm with you.
We're all going to just keep looking ahead to a bright future with James being healthy.
Absolutely.
Metal Up Your Podcast show at gmail.com. It's that easy, folks. You can write into us anything you want, questions, concerns, comments, jokes, tidbits, things you want to see on the show. If you still think we chew ice too much, don't send that email. That was like 2.5 years ago.
It was forever ago.
People do this a lot on the YouTube videos because we put all our episodes on YouTube.
I know what you're about
So
to say.
someone will see, a YouTube episode from 4 years, not 4 years, but like, how many years are we doing this now? 3?
Almost 3, yeah.
But even something 4 months ago, they're like, that's not a synthesizer on the Black Album. That's
You're like,
it's an EBO. All right.
Great. We've done like 30 episodes since then, or maybe more.
I saw someone write recently, they said about our Pusshead episode, they're like, too bad they didn't say anything about Pusshead. I'm like, wow, did you listen to the episode? Because it's literally all about, we covered his entire life.
It was probably a thing where they just didn't make it to the email part.
Right.
And then they were like, screw this.
Right.
But whatever.
People don't know how to skip ahead.
It's
I guess.
okay.
It's
They
totally
can-
fine.
yeah.
We're going to get out of the email corner now, and we're going to see you here in a second. We're going to take a quick little break, let you hear a jingle, a little Patreon commercial, and then we're going to set up the chat interview and
Boom.
get along with it. So here we go.
All right.
Hey, it's Clint from Metal Up Your Podcast, and we hope you're enjoying the Metal Tales from the Road series. If you've been keeping up with us, then you already know that we've covered every stop on the 2018-2019 North American Arena Tour, and we look forward to catching up with all of our European friends later this year on the Stadium Tour overseas. And there's more. After the Stadium Tour, we are continuing the Metal Tales series for any Metallica show in the past. Maybe you saw one of the Orion festivals. Maybe you were at the Channel in 1984 and Cliff Burton bought you a beer. Maybe you were at one of the 30th anniversary shows, or you just saw a regular-ass show in North Dakota somewhere. We want to hear from you. Since Ethan and I started Metal Up Your Podcast, we've wanted to find a way for listeners to call in and share their stories. Well, this is it. To make yourself eligible for a future or past Metal Tales episode, please consider joining us on Patreon. For $5 a month, you not only get to come on the show as a guest, you also get both of our Cover Our World Blackened EPs, monthly giveaways like deluxe box sets, rare vinyl, posters, and other goodies. You get early access to our YouTube videos, and we also let you ask our guests like Ray Burton, Michael Wagner, Hailstorm, members of Slipknot, your very own questions. For what essentially amounts to 2 cups of coffee a month, you can ensure that Metal Up Your Podcast continues to grow in quality and content. For any of you on the ride with us, we love you, we thank you, peace and adios.
I'm so excited for everybody to hear this interview, dude.
Me too.
Again, you did a great job.
Thank you.
Chad did wonderful. He seems like such an awesome dude, and I'm jealous I didn't get to be there for it, but I was excited to listen to it as a fan.
Well, and like most of the people that we've come into contact with, Chad will probably come on the show again.
Mm-hmm.
Alago texted me the other night. He wants to come back on the show.
He's dying to come back on.
Well, he's got a book I think he's about to put out.
Yeah, nice.
Or that might already be out. So, but yeah, I mean, Chad, the things you mentioned before, but like his early career with the Breeders, Hole, he toured with Tori freaking Amos.
I know. When I heard that, I knew you were stoked.
He worked with Bob Rock, which, Chad, by the way, you need to get us connected with old Bobby Rocker.
That would be awesome.
Getting the Metallica gig, how the interview process went, working at HQ, the Grammys with Lady Gaga, doing the Cornell tribute show, what happens when things go wrong on stage.
Yeah.
Like the correct tunings. I thought it was fun to talk about.
That was a
True,
cool section, yeah.
Thingy, Seeking the Story. We let the patrons ask a bunch of questions, what their rigs are like in North America versus Europe, just everything you can think of, So without further ado, I know everyone's anxious to hear from Chad. I want to say thank you to Chad, formally here on the show, for being a part of the Metal Up Your Podcast story and family now. And before we hear from Chad, also just want to send another shout out of well wishes to one Mr. Jimmy James Hetfield.
Of course, yeah.
So without further ado, here we bring you Chad Z.
Let's hear it.
All right, well, we're here with Chad Z, who's graciously taken some time out of his busy schedule on his break from touring to talk to us here at Metal Up Your Podcast. Hey, Chad, how's it going?
Howdy, folks.
So we are in between breaks. You just wrapped up S&M 2, which congrats on that. It was a huge success by all accounts. You've got a break here before you go to Australia. Is that correct?
Yeah, we've got a few weeks off to kind of get our lives back together and head down under. I was just looking at the flight times. I think we leave on the 12th and arrive on the 14th or something. I'm not sure what happens in between there, but there's a couple of days missing.
Yeah. My wife and I just did a vacation in Japan, and we left to come home from Osaka at 4 p.m. on a Tuesday. We finally got back home to Nashville after 24 hours at 8 p.m. on Tuesday. So
yeah.
I'm sure you're familiar with that. So you're based in Georgia, is that correct?
That's correct, yep.
So there's no, at this level of doing this kind of work, there's not really a need for you to be centrally located where the band is or in the Bay Area or anything.
No, I'm sure that they could use my help out there from time to time. It would, it might be more convenient to be located out there, but, we all kind of take airplanes to work, so it doesn't really matter where we live. We have people based all over Mexico, Europe, all over the States. So you can live anywhere and do this.
It's pretty cool, and I definitely want to get into all that because I am curious about how involved you are with the work that's being done at HQ, maybe in an off-tour season. But I think the thing, so we've all seen the rig rundowns, which, by the way, those are such a wealth of information. Thanks for being willing to do that when you're out on the deck on the day of a gig, taking time. I don't know how much of a pain that is for you, but those for guitar nerds and gear nerds and Metallica fans, those kinds of things are so valuable. I mean, what are those like for you? Is that kind of a pain in your day?
Nah, I mean, not really. We would just sort of rather have the sort of correct and current information out there, rather than kind of relying on someone else. There's that Guitar Magazine that goes around and does everybody's rig rundown, but then you're kind of, left to deal with how they edit it and what they think is appropriate information and stuff like that. So we just decided, why don't we just do it ourselves, and then we can kind of control exactly what information goes out there that we think would be the most helpful or interesting or whatever. Interesting side note, but I was at my daughter just started doing roller derby, and I was talking to one of the other mothers. It was like on the first day, and we got talking about music, and she started, we watched these videos at home where they talk about all the pedals and everything.
Right.
I was like, wow, a lot more people watch those things and try and learn from them or whatever than we had ever imagined. So it's been pretty good.
I think the last video that you did, which was on the North American Stadium tour. I mean, it's got over 1 million views on YouTube. I mean, yeah.
Is it really?
Oh yeah, dude, big time. I think that kind of with the internet age, being able to peek under the hood of this kind of thing, it's just giving people a lot of access. Whereas I'm 36, so I still kind of grew up in the world where bands were really mysterious.
Oh yeah.
And I think I still prefer that just out of nostalgia. But I do know that I am grateful it's there though, because.
Well, I understand it helps people out, and I grew up. I really wished I could have watched all of these drummer videos and stuff when I was growing up. I would have learned a lot more.
Are you a drummer primarily?
Yeah. That's my background in music anyway, and it really would have been helpful to just have all of that information available.
Right.
But at the same time, in order to find out about the band and what the guy was playing like and all of that stuff, you had to go to the show. I mean, that was where you went for everything you needed. It's like you buy a ticket and you got to go to the show and check it out for yourself.
Yeah, you could occasionally wait for a magazine cover or something, but then kind of like you were saying before, the information could be wrong. There's also something too, I think, as a player that you might be able to weigh in on too. Like, there's something to not being able to figure out how people did it, and which forces you to create your own sound. I mean, I'm sure if James Hetfield was able to look at whatever Judas Priest rig rundown, he wouldn't have sort of been forced to come up with what's become a really iconic tone.
Yeah, they from what I know, they sort of really got into the Mesa Boogie stuff just because they were located in the area.
Right. Sure. It was just really practical.
And then I'm sure that the other bands that used that gear from the area also influenced them. Like, hey, what kind of amp is that? That's Mesa Boogie. It's made right up the road. Okay, maybe I should check that out.
Right. Mesa Boogie's in Petaluma. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Right on. I'm sure that's convenient for when you're up there and need stuff done.
Yeah, they've been super helpful over all these years.
Well, I can't imagine it's a bummer for them to sort of have Metallica repping their stuff, even if it's unofficial. But I'm curious. So, how did you go from playing? I mean, were you born and raised in Georgia? Where are you from initially?
No, I grew up in southern Wisconsin. Not exactly the hotbed of of music.
No.
There was some stuff going on up there, but it was nothing like maybe growing up in L.A. or the Bay Area or New York or something like that. So we had to really fight for any kind of information.
Yeah. Were you playing drums? When did you start playing drums? Are you in sort of a local band or a cover band? Or
Yeah, I started out doing the school thing, playing in the school band, and I did that all through high school as well. And I actually went for a year of college to a music program up in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. And it was all I thought about back in the day, you know, and I really like the idea of going to Los Angeles or something to get in a band was just, I think, you know, far beyond what I thought I could really ever do. I don't know why it just seems so, you know, strange that somebody could actually do that. People do it all the time. I think had I been able to watch YouTube videos and things like that, I probably would have moved out there a long time
You might
ago,
have
but-
actually done it, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Were your parents supportive of you being a musician and playing in bands?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I was in, I was in a band with some guys in high school, just like everybody else. And I remember even when somebody brought in Master of Puppets, it was like, hey, we got to play this song. It's amazing. And I started listening to it. I'm like, oh my God, is this thing ever going to end? Because I was playing we were playing whatever pop rock songs and, you know, classic rock, as you call it now, type of stuff. And oh my God, there's another part. And then here comes another part. And then back to the first part. Wait a minute.
Right, you went from probably playing "Refugee" by Tom Petty to the 10-minute opus.
Yeah, but it was a challenge, and we did it, and it was really interesting, and it was eye opening in a way. I think that music was eye opening for a lot of other people.
I totally agree. I mean, it was a rite of passage, and I had the same experience. I was in a little high school band. I'm from Birmingham, Alabama. I live in Nashville now, but
oh, cool.
I remember it was a rite of passage to play Master of Puppets in its entirety without stopping. That was sort of a benchmark for us. So,
Yeah.
So how do you go from a high school drummer to what was your foray into teching, into the crew world?
Well, it's slightly convoluted, but I went to college for a year, music program, and I sort of flailed around a bit. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. That was a jazz program, and it wasn't really speaking to me. And funnily enough, they didn't ask me to come back the following year after that.
Made it easy for you, I guess.
Yeah, and so I kind of floated around for a year. I did a bunch of landscaping and that, and I kind of realized that maybe bending over a shovel all summer long was maybe not the most fun thing to do for the rest of my life.
Right.
And actually, my mom found this recording engineer program up in Minneapolis. And as soon as I started looking at it, I was like, oh, wow, this is super interesting. Because I was always into sort of, you know, technical things. I was always taking, you know, the stereo apart and any kind of thing to sort of, you know, my radio to try and find out how it worked and stuff. So once I got up to that recording program, I really sort of found my people. And that was the most eye-opening thing, was like, oh, wow, you can be technical and creative at the same time. And when those two things got together for me, that's sort of what did it. So while I was there, I ended up discovering live sound, and I was helping the guy set up the PA system on the Friday when all of the other, you know, it was like a music and recording engineer program. So when all the lab bands were playing what they had been learning all week on Fridays, and I was helping to set the stuff up. So I thought, well, this is pretty cool. So I ended up going over to the biggest sound company in Minneapolis and the region, and started working there at their rental department, taking small systems out and stuff, sort of learning the ropes and learning from all the techs and stuff, audio guys that had been there. So I really started out with an audio background. And while I was working there, I ended up taking a monitor system out on the road with a band called the Breeders. And that was fun. I loved it. I was like, oh my God, I'm on the road. You know, I'm like 20, 21 years old at this point. And
So you were doing monitors for that band on tour?
I was setting up the system, yeah. And there was another guy actually doing the monitors.
Okay.
And then I think I would do the opening act or something like that. But that was really then, you know, the technical, the creative, working with creative people, and then traveling around and you know, seeing the States was just, oh man, I just fell in love with it. And so then the following summer, the Breeders were invited to go play Lollapalooza, and they needed another backline or instrument tech, because the changeovers are so fast on that thing. They're like 15-minute changeovers, so
Right.
you need to get all your crap off stage as quickly as possible. And they liked me as a person, and we got along. And the other crew guys were like, "Hey, let's just get Chad to see if he wants to do guitars." And I had played a little guitar. I had learned some stuff from my mom growing up, so I knew some chords and I knew how to plug the stuff in and take care of it. So off we went. That was my first guitar tech.
What was the learning curve like for you as a drummer? That you knew a few chords, you knew your way around it, but jumping into a serious guitar teching sitch, I mean, was it a sink or swim type deal?
Those guys weren't all that serious,
Right.
It was just trying to keep the stuff plugged in and working, changing batteries and, changing strings. And it wasn't, I didn't find it extremely difficult at that point. So it was enough to keep me interested and involved. So, from there, then the management company, Gold Mountain, who managed the Breeders, also managed Courtney Love's band Hole.
Mm-hmm.
And so when that ended, they said, "Hey, we've got another tour for you. It's a high stress, low sleep situation." I was like, well, I want to stay on the road. I kind of want to keep doing this. I didn't want to go back to, sort of doing corporate gigs and stuff in Minneapolis. So I said, yeah, I'll try it. And that turned out to be really good, like trial by fire for me, because I really had to learn, how to take care of all the band gear and how to keep it all together and put it back together when it was smashed, and dealing with temperamental artists and stuff like that.
How were you traveling? I don't know where Hole was in their trajectory. Were they in buses? Were they playing big clubs or theaters?
Yeah, we were all sharing a bus.
Okay.
Yeah, this was after Kurt had passed away, and they were just supporting their popular record.
Right.
And so we were kind of, things were moving up, but it was good sized theaters and stuff, and it was such a spectacle at the time.
Right.
That everybody was coming out. There was a lot of support, and so I got a chance to learn. We got another guitar tech. Finally, added another guitar tech for Eric, Billy Bush, who knew a lot more about guitars and stuff than I did. So he was great to learn from. And I mentioned his name because he then hired me years later to go work for Garbage.
Okay.
And it was then where we hired Justin Crew, who is Kirk's guitar tech, to come out and fill in as a drum tech, I think, at the time on that tour for a short while. So that's when I met Justin, and we got along famously, had a lot of fun. And so it was years later when I was filling in for Justin, I think it was on Tori Amos, that he stopped by and said, well, James needs a new guitar tech. I said, well, put my name in the hat. And I had already known their management company, Q Prime, because Hole had went from Gold Mountain to Q Prime while I was still with the band. So that's kind of when I first met, Cliff and Peter and stuff like that. And
well, let me ask you this. This is going to drive our listeners crazy, but I'm such a big Tori Amos fan.
Okay.
So were you teching for Matt, or who were you teching for when you were working with Tori?
Yeah, I was doing John, bass player.
Oh, okay, cool. What record would that have been, or what tour would that have been?
I can't even remember. I would have to say that was in the 2000s still.
Okay, so Scarlet's Walk maybe, or...
So, yeah, I'd have to look that up.
How was your experience with them? Was it pleasant? I mean, were they cool? Was it?
Yeah, I mean, it was. They had a pretty fun crew. They were all. It was. We were carrying, some lights, I think, and sound and all that, and we were doing outdoor sheds, I believe. So it was pretty chill. It was pretty laid back, which was a nice change at the time.
So you put your name in for the Metallica gig, specifically for James. Is that something where you sort of felt like, because I think we've told you this before, but Ethan and I are both professional touring musicians also. And
Yeah.
then Ethan was a tech for Kings of Leon. He techs for Brandy Carlisle now. There's a sort of required desensitization you get around these things. You've been working with Hole and Garbage and Tori Amos. But for a band like Metallica, a band you played Master of Puppets with your high school band, when you put your name in the hat for that, are you really hoping you get it, or is it just another gig? How were you feeling before this all happened?
Well, honestly, I was sort of becoming a little. I was kind of growing tired of the whole. I don't know, not the scene, but just what I was doing, the whole guitar tech thing. It was kind of like, okay, I got it. You put the strings on, you take the strings off, and there's different bands, and it wasn't that challenging for me. And I was really considering just finding something else to do. And for lack of a better word, I was just getting bored.
Right.
And so when that thing came up, I was like, well, I'll check it out, throw my name in. I mean, it's like a world-class band, there's only a few of them, so you might as well give it a shot. You got to see, you might as well test your metal, see what you're made of, see if you can do it,
right.
Because I had always just pictured, having known people that worked for Metallica and stuff, I had always considered these Metallica tours as these great big freight trains that just, plow everything over.
Right.
And I didn't want to get run over. And as James put it, he just said, don't get run over, just hop on.
Right.
And that sort of made sense to me. And they flew me and a couple other guys out to San Francisco to meet with James. And it was actually the first kind of job interview I'd had in, I don't know, probably 15 years at that point, because, a lot of this stuff, as you know, is word of mouth, and your friends on a tour and they invite you on their tour, or,
right.
This thing's come up. It's just, this guy's qualified, just hire him. You'll be fine.
And Kirkstech had already been working with Kirk, so he probably, when it came up, would that be something that, I've kind of heard that because Zach has been there the longest, he's kind of a guy you go through also, or was it just as simple as Kirkstech telling James, hey, this is your dude, he's great?
Well, that's what James didn't want, is to just have a recommendation off from somebody else. James was kind of taking, at that time, more control over who he was surrounded with and what people were like.
What year was this?
2003.
Oh, wow. Okay. So yeah, this is sort of post, right when Saint Anger was getting done. He'd come back from rehab. So yeah, he's made some big changes, and he wants to connect with who he's going to work with.
Exactly. So he wanted to make sure that, he had somebody that he could trust and wasn't going to let him down. And
so how long did it take you to get off all the drugs you were on so you could get the gig?
I had already sort of been through my rough phase a number of years before that. So I was doing okay at that point, but
I feel like, because you'd already been a bit of a road dog by this point, and I'm coming up on 20 years on the road, and you see the people who fall by who can't figure out how to get well and get healthy, and it's just not a long game you can play unless you're willing to tighten up in that area,
Exactly, and that's just why it's not the big party backstage that you think it is.
Absolutely,
it's professional job. You can't do it and last.
One of the best things I ever did is on a 2-week run. I brought my wife out for a week on the bus. Mm-hmm. And I think she really just thought it was a whole party, and she was able to just see how boring it is, how you're just sitting around with a bunch of dudes in a really tight space all the time. And she always looked when I would go off on a tour, she looked at it a little differently, a little more realistically after that. It was good.
Yeah. James asked me how I dealt with the stress of being on the road, and, that was kind of important to him. And I ended up getting sober myself, a number of years after being hired. Mm-hmm. But that's a whole nother chapter.
Sure.
But it was just, him wanting to know, feel out who his guy was going to be. And
did you know the other dudes that were up for it?
I found out afterwards, one of the guys that they flew out, I think he was living in Austin at the time. Yeah. And he was somebody I knew, and he was a guitar tech that always got the gig whenever he and I were up for the same gig.
Ah, that must have felt nice to finally get it from him, huh?
Yeah.
Well, James must have, he must have connected with you and appreciated your vibe. And was it who made the call that said, "Hey, you got the gig. We're doing A, B, and C. You need to come out." Blah blah blah. Who made the call?
Well, it happened really pretty quickly. I sat down with James and Dan Brown was there, I think, and we had sort of also connected on, sort of old cars and doing that whole thing, kind of being a motorhead as well. So James kind of understood where I was coming from there. We just sort of had that connection, and I also found out that our birthday is the exact same day. So
Wow.
I figured I got to be a shoo-in now, right?
Yeah, it's cosmic.
But I went back to the they just flew me out that day, and then I went back to the hotel for a minute, and I was going to fly out that evening, and then I got the call like about 30 minutes later, and said, "You screwed up, man. You screwed up. You got it.
You're in. Yeah.
Yeah."
Would that mean that one of the first big tours you did with him was a stadium tour? Is that correct?
We were supposed to go to South America at the time, and that got scrapped.
Mm-hmm.
And the first tour I did was when we went to Japan
Okay.
in that fall. So it was, they were pretty big indoor gigs at the time, but every Metallica show is a big show. So
Sure.
it's kind of you can't really differentiate what a big show is versus a small show.
Was that your first time to travel that way, like travel to Japan?
No, I had been out there already
Okay.
several times, with other bands.
Right.
I had been around already.
So for you coming in, you got the gig. I mean, I've been in similar positions. Hey, you're the dude. You got the gig. You fucked up. You're in, whatever.
Yeah.
And you also had the experience. Was there a period of, like with the text that we have out with us, you got to sort of establish trust more so than in the interview, but also just in the real world on the deck. Was there a transition for you where getting comfortable with the crew, someone like Big Mick who's been there for their whole career, blah, blah, blah. What was that like for you?
Well, everyone was really super helpful. They, they really wanted to see me succeed, because if I succeed, then James succeeds, and if he succeeds, then the band succeeds, right? So
Correct.
everyone was super helpful and gave me whatever I needed to fit in and make it happen. And it was definitely a learning curve. It was a different level of energy and how they tour, and just trying to learn the catalog at that point, because I was thrown right into having to do all the the pedal switching and stuff for James. So I had to learn all the songs, and I had sat down for a few weeks before that and written out all my own cheat sheets, listening to all the material, and
Was there an overlap period with his former tech or anything like that where they could come
No.
in? Okay, so you kind of
No.
came in dry except for the other techs who could.
yeah, I think we had only had maybe one or two rehearsals at that point.
Wow, at HQ.
Yeah, boy, I don't remember. It must have been.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a couple rehearsals at HQ, but it was definitely trial by fire.
Right.
And that was Saint Anger had just come out, so there was quite a bit of that material in the set list.
So you're dealing with drop tune guitars and that
Yeah.
sort of wrangling that tone that was so unique to that record.
And the strange arrangements,
Right.
It's like 12 here, 4 there, then there's a measure of 5, and then you go back to the first time, but it's different, It's not like verse, chorus, solo, chorus out, you know what I mean?
Yeah, they're long songs that don't really have the kind of classic Metallica demarcation points. Here's where
Right.
it gets mellow, here's where it gets heavy, here's where Kirk does this, James does that, yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty strange, but
So even back then, it was a situation where they had no foot control over their changes. It was all behind the deck or backstage already in
Yeah.
2003.
yeah, they were all pretty well used to that at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I guess when I explain this to people, I just tell them that, well, James doesn't really want to think about that part of it.
Right.
And not only that, he's running around to maybe 9 different microphones to sing. So it's kind of hard to be running back, to a pedal board somewhere in the middle of the stage to hit your sounds, So
Did you go back and watch any of the live stuff they've put out to sort of get a feel for how they move around? Had you seen the band live?
Yeah, I had seen them. Actually, we did the show in way up in Canada in Tuktoyaktuk. It was a Molson Golden something or another show.
So you were there with Hole.
Exactly, yeah.
That's kind of a famous show in the Metallica pantheon because it's such an odd thing.
It was.
It's one of the only times the band has ever played the song Fixer, as they sort of sound checked with that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I was too busy freezing my butt off.
Yeah. So, that was an interesting, from what we've seen, there's like a documentary about that gig. And it's funny that you were there with Hole. That's crazy because her and Lars pretended that they got married and all that stuff.
Yeah, because they were Q Prime at the time. And
That's right. That's right.
Veruca Salt, I think, was on that gig also.
Yep.
Who I went to work for. I did a record with them and Bob Rock actually out in Hawaii. So kind of knowing Bob Rock as well, I suppose that was another person they could call and ask about, who I was.
What were you doing for the record?
I was just looking after all the gear
Okay.
and kind of looking after the band.
Is that something that you do also with Metallica when they're making records or writing?
Zach does most of that stuff, but it can really drag on. So this
Right.
last time around, they had me out a couple times to sort of, help out with whatever, and kind of it's more important when James is playing guitar, that I said that he's comfortable with somebody that, is keeping track of his guitars and stuff. It's not a very, laid back thing in the studio. I don't know, it's just sort of intense for some reason.
What do you mean, the vibe or the work ethic?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just not everybody sitting around in chairs like mulling stuff over. It's pretty
it's deliberate.
It's pretty interesting. It's pretty intense, and that's kind of the way they do it. So, generally it'll be James in there just kind of by himself for the most part, and after they've worked out all the parts and done all the rehearsals and stuff like that.
Is it ever anything like maybe you get a text from him that says, hey, I'm going to be at HQ for the next 2 weeks. I want these 15 guitars sort of ready to rock. These are what I want to use. Or do you ever fulfill that kind of, cool, I need to have these 15 guitars ready because this is what he wants to track with? Some are on the road, some are cased up in HQ, some might be in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, there's most of that stuff is kind of, they've got a pretty good selection of recording guitars that are already kind of hanging around in the studio.
Mm-hmm.
But there are times where James is like, hey, I've got this other show I'm doing or something, I need you to be there. Or, yeah, I mean, we're going to be at HQ or we're doing rehearsals or something, and, he wants to make sure I'm there.
I was watching recently, there was sort of this remote interview thing that James and Kirk did for Guitar Center, where they're both playing through some of their stuff. I think Lars even did it too with some of his Thomas stuff. Are you guys usually called to do remote things like that involve specifically guitars and drums and gear?
I guess it depends. I mean, it has to warrant, putting me on a plane and getting me out there and buying the hotel rooms and all of that kind of stuff.
Right.
So a lot of times, there's someone around there that can just, put a guitar together real quick. But if James is putting a guitar on in front of people, I'm there typically.
What about the San Francisco when they played the Star Spangled Banner, for example?
Yeah, for the Giants games and stuff. Yeah, we go out for that because that's, man, you're talking about live TV at that point.
Right.
So,
interesting.
You can't stop. So,
so what do you when you are in between some of that, and maybe they have a few smaller remote things, or Zach's covering the HQ stuff? Are you on a retainer? Or are you trying to go are you hopping on other tours that your buds are calling you because they know that you're? I know that doesn't Justin also do Taylor Swift stuff in off season?
Yeah. It's sometimes you just go do things just because it's different and you have a little bit of time off. There's a few of us that are on a salary now.
Okay.
Which, as you know, in this industry is a really hard thing to find.
It's very, very nice. Yes.
Yeah. And so I think at some point they sort of figured out, or decided that we want to make sure that these guys are there when we go to do a show.
Absolutely.
And the way Metallica works is they don't just plan a 6-month or 12-month or even 2-year tour after a record comes out. It's just a constant thing, and it's constantly evolving. And the band actually wants to be able to say yes to any gig at any time, like the Outside Lands thing, or if
the Cornell tribute.
or if I think one time a headliner of some festival somewhere dropped out. So there's promoters and a whole festival, and everybody's looking at this like, oh my God, what are we going to do? We need a headliner. And if they ask the band and the band wants to say yes, then they have to sort of be able to assemble the crew. So I think they decided, let's just make sure that these guys are going to be around.
Right.
I'm lucky, very lucky.
Well, I'm sure, you are, of course. I'm sure it's also well-deserved, though, because as I know with the artists I play guitar for and then some of our crew, you get to a point where you trust them and rely on them so much that it's absolutely worth it. You bring the value to the table that would warrant that kind of, that would warrant you being on salary and being on call and being ready to go.
Yeah, you can't sort of pull off some of the stuff the band likes to pull off, like last-minute things or, Grammys show or something like that. You can't, have a brand new crew and pull these things off. It's just not going to be possible.
Let's talk, if you don't mind, for a second about the Grammy, since you bring it up. So the famous Lady Gaga collaboration, Moth and the Flame, James's mic isn't on, super frustrating. Now, what I've been told by some of my crew buddies that are at that level is that the frustrating thing about that kind of show is your crew's there, but you're not really able to do as much as you otherwise would. Is that the case?
It is, yeah. You have to sort of interface with
like a local union crew.
The audio company that's there, and you have to, you're sort of forced to interface with everybody. If you're doing a festival, we bring in all our own stuff. We're the headliner, but it's all of our own, maybe except for the lighting or the racks and stacks or stuff like that, because we only want to rely on the stuff that we know, the stuff that we have, the stuff we've been taking care of.
Right.
And we don't like to rely on outside people, just because when it goes wrong, who do you look at and who do you blame? Ultimately, it's your fault because, it just falls on you. And I'm thinking more specifically in the audio. And I mean, it'd be sort of like showing up with rental gear with this band. You couldn't really, here's a guitar you've never seen before, James. Check it out. You know, you kind of have to have your own stuff. So interfacing at the Grammys and big TV things like that, and I see why they do it, is because they have to have certain people that interface with all of the bands to make it sort of go out on TV in some fashion. And it's a lot. Those guys have a lot to do, and it's hard.
Absolutely. Well, there was some talk that maybe his vocal was coming through the broadcast, that there was, I don't know, it's all confusing for me. Were you the lucky person that got to catch the snake bite when it got thrown?
Oh yeah. I always forget about that. But the difficult part was, we had done the run through in the afternoon,
mm-hmm.
and everything was fine. And even our audio guys were located so far off the stage, they couldn't do anything anyway. But what had happened was, they had run the mic cables out to the front mic positions, and everything was fine. And for the run through, and then for the show, we had basically actors that all had whatever kind of metal shirts on or whatever, and they were dancing on the stage.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what had happened was one or two of the people were jumping up and down like they were told to, but they had run the mic cables basically under their feet.
Wow.
And it was one mic cable plugged into another mic cable until somebody stepped on it and unplugged it. And it was just one of those things, like, yeah, if it had been all of our stuff and all of our mic cables and lines and all of that stuff, we wouldn't have run the cables that way. It's kind of a difficult thing. In hindsight, you could make lots of changes, but You sort of have to deal with pushing your drum riser out as quickly as possible and then taking the vocal mics off of the drum riser and throwing them out front so the guys can stand and sing into them, in the course of maybe a 2-minute commercial break or something like that.
Right.
And while all that's happening, there's set pieces going up and down and people are running in every direction, and it's absolute chaos.
It sounds like it. We have a friend of ours named Wes who I believe does James's monitor.
Yeah.
And he was telling us he was part of the crew that got tapped to go do the Chris Cornell gig. And he was just talking about how crazy it was because you guys were already kind of in the middle of something, and he would had to sort of take a red eye to California, and that show had its own problems because the stage is, what do you call that when the stage swivels like that, where you can set up the next band behind, like the
turntable stage,
right?
Yeah,
and then I guess something was wrong with James's teleprompter or something.
I don't remember that specifically. It could have been, but anytime you have to stack up all of your gear in and around 10 other bands worth of gear,
yeah, it's crazy.
There's gonna be something's gonna happen.
Is there a sense of, like, not in a bad way, but in a normal way? I know with my boss it's the same deal, but if something like that happens, is there a sense of like, oh shit, like we're gonna get a talking to, or the vibe's gonna be weird for a minute?
Yeah, I mean, the last thing you want to do is let your band down or let your guy down.
Sure, right.
And the worst part is you just don't, you feel for them because they're standing out there in front of everybody, the entire world basically.
Right.
And you don't want to see them have any sort of problem, because they're just hanging out there like old laundry, you know what I mean, just blowing in the wind, and there's not much you can do sometimes, but you don't ever want to see that. It sucks, and it just makes your heart sink, and you want to be pro and you want every show to go perfectly, but it's the real world. These things are going to happen.
Absolutely.
And you're going to be mad, and there's been a couple times where James has been really mad at whatever, and he knows how to get over it, fortunately, and things happen.
I'm thinking specifically about a show that I was actually front row at in St. Louis, where he kicked his guitar. Do you recall this?
When he kicked the acoustic over?
Yeah. What was going on with that? Was that because I do want to get into some gear talk soon, but
Sure.
That was like a digital guitar that takes MIDI notes, and they were playing Fade to Black, which I believe is like down half a step, and it was like, is that what was going on? Do you recall the details?
Yeah. Here's the story on that one. That guitar, we found another system by the Auto-Tune guys that is an onboard, basically, sound generator that's inside of the guitar. Mm-hmm. So the sound actually comes out of the guitar. It's not just a MIDI controller like some other systems are. And so the way that system is it's an auto-tune thing. So when you press the button and it listens to all the strings before you actually play it, it says, oh, all of your strings are down half a step, which is what we normally tune to, D sharp.
Right.
And so it goes, and it pulls all the strings up half a step. Okay, so now the guitar's in E. So what I have to do is I go back to the pedal board and I hit my preset, which then tells the guitar, hey, you want to be down half a step.
Right.
So what happened was on that stage, it's the same stage that we're using now, is the location of our racks and the video screens in between, and between the rack and the guitar itself, which is out down on the stage. I end up sending that message to the guitar with a wireless MIDI system.
Right.
And that was the only one I could find that had the furthest range. And it wasn't enough that day.
Right.
So you have things, because it runs in the Wi-Fi bands. So if you have a lot of other Wi-Fi activity and there's a lot of RF and noise and stuff that comes off the great big giant video walls that stand in between, the guitar didn't receive that message when I hit the pedal board.
I think people take for granted that what you're saying, like, You've got wireless signals. You've got these big screens, lights, pyro, 50,000 people with their Wi-Fi, with their cell networks.
Yeah,
It's almost a miracle that any of this stuff works at all. You know what I mean?
it is. Well, what ended up happening was the system that I had bought was the weak link in all of this. And what I ended up doing last year, or maybe 2 years ago now, is I started looking at the technology myself, and I basically built my own wireless MIDI system because there wasn't anything on the market that was good enough.
So you're tapping into the nerd in you than when you were a kid, pulling stuff apart, figuring out how it works.
Exactly, and it was kind of fun and it was frustrating. And I'm actually doing some more stuff with that electronics platform that I ended up using. But since I've done that, the range on the actual wireless sender receiver units are far more than what the old one was, and I can walk all the way out to big mix still with the unit and still get good reception. And since I've done that, I haven't had a single problem with it.
I imagine it's similar to seeing a spider in your shower. You're jumpy for like the next 10 showers before you're like, all right, there's not a damn spider in here.
Yeah, it is super reliable system that I have now, and it's just one less thing during the show that you have to think about or worry about.
Sure, which is really important, I imagine, when you're worrying about guitar changes, pedal effects changes. And I did want to ask you, is there anything when you came into the camp, a well-established camp by 2003, of course, especially throughout the 90s, was there anything that you came in and said, you know what, was there anything you cleaned up and said, you guys could be doing this in a more streamlined way, be doing this better? Is there something you brought to the table and changed for them?
I was a bit more into the technical stuff. Having worked for Garbage, I sort of got hip to a few things working for them. And you can't just expect to walk into somebody's camp and go, hey, I'm here, I'm going to change everything for you.
Right.
Because that's just not how it's going to happen, and it's not going to make everybody feel comfortable. So, but what they did do was they gave me, the resources to try things and do things that I think would be better. So if something wasn't cutting it, or like we were actually kind of fighting with the regular wireless guitar system. So I said, okay, let's try this brand, let's try this thing. I maybe need some different antennas, and I was trying to figure all that stuff out at the time too. But that's what's good with working with this band, is they give you the resources to be able to try things. And when you call a company up and say, hey, I'm having this problem, and oh, by the way, I work for Metallica, they're generally pretty happy to try and help you out.
It sounds like there's some trust there too, with you, where they trust you to check it out. You're not going to waste a bunch of money or go off on a tangent with something that doesn't work,
Yeah, well, because what happened with us moving to the Fractals, you wouldn't think that Metallica would be one of the first bands to sort of grab this digital technology and run with it. You think, oh man, they're old school. They're going to have stacks of heads and cabinets and everything they want. Right. And we had to sort of go down that road when we did the
Antarctica, right?
Antarctica thing, yeah, because we couldn't carry all of that equipment, so we had to figure out a way we were going to make it work. How can we bring very, very minimal stuff and make it happen?
And this is pre-Kemper. I mean, this is kind of before. It's pretty fashionable now. I mean, Metallica really was one of the first bands that did it on such a big level.
Yeah, Kemper was there at the time, I believe. We looked at them for a minute, but they couldn't. You couldn't run two amp simulations at the same time, and James has always had the Mesa Boogie sound and the Diesel sound mixed together, right? So that was one thing that sort of put them out of the running right away. And the Fractal guys have been really good with us and spent a lot of time helping us achieve what we needed to achieve at the time, and that was to make that gear sound like our analog gear.
How involved with that process are you when they say we now want our Master of Puppets sound to sound exactly like that JCM 800, that piggyback, whatever it is? How involved are you at achieving that setting in the Fractals?
100% involved.
Wow.
I sort of had to take it's things changed because I was looking after all of James' gear the way it had been put together before I got there. So I was just a caretaker. And when things evolved and went to change, when they realized, hey, this could sound pretty good, and it could sound exactly the same in between our black system and our blue system, because amps never sound the same. So when you're looking for consistency in sound, no matter where you are, that's the way to go. Apart from that, they realize that, hey, if we don't air freight all of these cabinets and all of these heads and all of these racks and all of this gear, we could save a lot of money.
Right.
And it's still going to sound good. If it didn't sound good, in the end, we wouldn't be doing it. And that's, you can't sort of lose sight of that. But once we changed over to the Fractals, then it was really pretty much up to me and Zach and Justin and Matt at Fractal to make it happen, and then to keep it up, and then to keep up with the advancements of the firmware and
Software updates.
And all of that stuff. And things change and things get a lot better. And I kind of had to tell James, hey, I'm sort of running with this because, I have to own this or no one else is going to, you know what I mean?
Right.
And as long as I'm making him happy and he listens to it and he's like, oh man, that sounds great, then I'm doing my job.
That's quite a responsibility too, Chad, because it's odd because Kirk obviously is the lead guitar player and he is an iconic guitar hero for sure. But for some reason, James is more heralded for his tone. Like his clean tone, he somehow found a way to do that chorusy thing that's not cheesy. And so for that to sort of fall on you to recreate his clean tone for the song one of the most beloved clean tones of all time, and all this, Nothing Else Matters. That's quite a responsibility to get right.
Yeah, and it's good to have the support, but ultimately, I'm back to being able to be technical and creative at the same time.
Sure.
And that's when I have the most fun. So I really enjoy it. There's hurdles to get over, and there's the Fractal guys have been sending us like live updates, firmware updates, and we're having a problem, stuff like that. Like, it's really hard to get that kind of support from any company anywhere. But they really wanted us to see that we were happy and to make sure that this worked.
Well, yeah, another one of the benefits of working with such a huge band with such a huge reach,
Yeah.
Metallica using Fractal could inspire a lot of big bands below them or at their current level to jump on board with that too. So it's
I think if anything, it helped people to realize that it could be done and it was feasible and that it was possible and that it was like sort of like a new era. And I remember having this conversation with James was, if we do this, it's a big change, but I think it's going to be beneficial because what has happened since then is we are now able to do things with his guitar tone that we wouldn't have been able to do with the analog gear.
Absolutely.
So you get to see and feel like a progression in what his guitar tone is, or because it's like you listen to an amp and think, boy, wouldn't it be great if I could just add a little something here or there, and we're not able to pull amps apart and switch out components and or build our own amps that suit us, and it's just not possible. But to be able to open up your laptop and go in there and make some tweaks and adjustments or changes to make it the way you want, it's just like it's a dream to be able to do that. And one thing in particular is we tune down to D sharp and you kind of dial in the rig there. But oftentimes with analog gear, if you plug something in that's a drop tuning, like the low end sort of falls apart.
Right.
And it doesn't do that with the Fractal. So you get to sort of keep all your tone no matter what the tuning is.
So when they made Hardwired and they're preparing to go tour it, and you're going to be playing a lot of that material, they recorded it, from what I understand, in standard, but they play it half step down. So did you actually go to HQ and look at the way the Diesel is dialed in or the way the Boogie's dialed in, how they blend, and sort of print that into the Fractal? What was the process of getting, like, Now That We're Dead sounding like Now That We're Dead live?
what we tried that early on because James was like, oh wait, great, I could have my, when people are doing tone prints and things, I could have my Master of Puppets sound when I play Master of Puppets.
Right.
But it doesn't work that way. It doesn't translate because the sound that you're used to hearing is the final
Mastered
sound. And mixed guitar sound. And it doesn't sound the same. It doesn't translate. And when you play it through a live guitar rig, it might sound just like that, but it doesn't sound good. And it don't take that the wrong way.
No, I can see it. I can see how it wouldn't mix the same,
But when you play it, it just doesn't feel or sound natural. It's a weird sort of phenomenon. And what you can't do is you can't change the guitar sound from song to song so drastically throughout a 2.5 hour show and have there be any sort of consistency and poor Mick could be out there grabbing at the faders and the knobs all night long. So the idea was to just replicate what we were doing with the live gear. You have a good live sound that sounds good, that works for all of the songs.
Right. Yeah, that definitely makes sense because there's got to be a thread live that's not because they sounded a lot different in 1984 than they do in 2016. So
yeah, it just doesn't work.
Can you clear up something that Metallica fans argue about a lot since we have the source here?
I hope so.
This is the tuning for the drop stuff, like Sad But True, Thing That Should Not Be, Seek. Now, some people say it's just drop D. Some people say it's like D tuning, where everything's down a whole step. Can you clear up the tunings for Sad But True and The Thing That Should Not Be?
Thing That Should Not Be, we tune the whole guitar down to C sharp.
To C sharp. So it's D, but down half a step, right?
It's the whole guitar comes down. It's not a drop tuning. So Sad But True is the D, what we call the D tuning. So it's E down to D and all the way up. So it's D. Let me think now. I'm not sitting in front of it. Yeah, D, G, C, F, A, D.
Right.
So that's for Sad and Seek.
Okay. And then Dream No More is the baritone purple Snakebite. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would much prefer, this is just personal aside, I'd much prefer to see that than the Grinch guitar. The Viper. I just love those.
Yeah.
I just love the snake bites.
Yeah. I just got rid of the old Grinches that were in the system since we've got the new purple ones. And those are all back at HQ. I just got rid of them, actually.
What does that mean for you when to get rid of them? Do you send them? Do you ship them? Do you personally oversee them getting to HQ?
We had air freighted all of our guitars from the European tour out to the S&M gigs because we wanted to have sort of all of the stuff we had just been using, and it's kind of their favorite guitars now are in the Black system. So we air freighted all that stuff to be there. So we would have all the good stuff, so to speak.
When you say blue and black system, what are you referring to?
We have identical systems so that we can put one entire backline, drums, everything, racks, a whole set of guitars. We could put it in a C container and send it off to, say, Australia,
right,
while we're doing shows with the other system, say, in Europe. Or so we can leave them on different continents or different hemispheres, so to speak, and move the gear around more efficiently.
Is it a pain for you to have to consider the European voltage systems and the power and?
Not so much of that. It's more of the maintenance and the if something changes in one system, you have to make sure you change it in the other system.
Ah, right, an effect or a patch or something.
Yeah, and that's a lot easier now. With the fractals, it's you just you download all the presets and everything, and you stick them in the other one. But it's trying to keep up on strings and batteries, and now I have a purple baritone snakebite guitar in this system, so I need one in the other system. You don't ever buy just one of anything.
Right.
You have to make sure that you're keeping up on the other system. I think we have to use the other system coming up next year. where our equipment is going to be en route, I think, from Australia. So we're going to have to use the other gear in the States. And that's just another thing that allows the band to do, to do more shows if they want to.
Right. Are you at liberty to tell us anything that might be going on next year? Is there any talk about studio time or records or?
You tell me.
Okay. Yeah.
It is going back to that, the access the fans have these days. We often find out from fan club members or other people when something has been announced or something is going on.
Yeah. Hey, you're going to South America, by the way, Chad.
Yeah,
Have fun.
exactly. Like, oh, really? Yeah. It happens all the time.
Well, speaking of Metallica nerds like me, if it's cool with you, I want to transition to some of these Patreon questions.
Sure, yeah.
And I want to be sensitive to your time, so we won't camp out too long. But
That's fine.
one of the things that you and I talked about in our emails when we started talking about you coming on the show is you seemed a little surprised that people would even be interested in what you do. Does it surprise you that, for example, when you had your accident, that so many people wanted, were concerned and wanted you to feel well? So many people are interested in what your day's like. Is that an odd thing for you?
It is a little bit. I don't. It's weird because it's nice. It's really nice when people are concerned about your welfare.
Sure.
That feels good. But I'm always a little wary because, the focus should be on the band.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And I'm just kind of on the sidelines. I'm in the back. I'm support. So I just feel weird if something becomes about me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I just don't like to do that.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I feel the same way, even just as the guitar player for the country guy I play for. I'm there to make sure he looks great. And so there are moments where we can stand out and run down a catwalk and play a solo, but ultimately we're hanging back, letting him have the spotlight. So that's cool, dude. It's humbling. But nevertheless, people are interested in your world. So we've got some questions from the patrons. You've generously agreed to answer some of them. So I'll just dive right in, and we can kind of make these shorter answers. We don't have to camp out too long in these. Chris Porter says, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to. He says, what's something about James that ordinary fans may not know? Is his favorite drink Pepsi? Is he into Ren and Stimpy? What's something innocuous about him that people wouldn't know?
I think everybody knows so much about him. They probably know more about him than I do.
True.
I think the average the casual fan might not know how funny he is.
Right.
Often somebody go, oh yeah, I was listening to this thing and James is talking about taking care of bees.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, yeah, he likes bees. I think it's probably his sense of humor.
Right. Yeah. He's still got an air of mischievousness to him that I love. And being a father myself, I like his sort of dad humor vibe.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I hear his humor come out on stage a lot, every night.
Right.
But just the general all around, he loves to crack a joke.
Chris also asks, is there a city that you look forward to when a tour is announced? Do you have a favorite spot you like to go to?
I guess it depends on what continent you're on.
Sure. How about in the States?
Yeah, in the States, I don't know. It's hard to say how much time you have to explore around and stuff. But as far as vibes go, I still like Austin. I kind of like going to the Pacific Northwest.
Right.
Anywhere there's a kind of any sort of underground scene, or there's younger people doing kind of what they want to do in that sort of Portland vein, I guess.
Sure.
That sort of thing kind of attracts me to an area. It's nice to take advantage of natural resources and stuff when you can. When there's certain places that might be good for going out and driving go-karts, and there's other places that are good maybe for museums or something.
Sure.
So it's I really like everywhere. There's not too many places I really don't like.
Yeah, it sounds like when you took to touring pretty early and you were just excited to be out. I know a lot of us that have been doing this a long time feel the same way. I'm cool with whatever,
Yeah.
Bay Razor asks, what do you do when Metallica is not touring? We sort of touched on that, but do you have any hobbies? You still play drums? You said you pick up some other gigs sometimes.
Yeah, I try not to do a whole lot I just try and separate from work, really,
Sure.
and kind of recharge at home. And I've got twin 10-year-old girls, and they take up a lot of my time. And when I'm at home, I really like to focus on them, because when I'm gone, it's a lot more difficult to stay in touch. So when I'm at home, I really like to be with them and do things with them as much as possible. I also like, for me, to be able to go out to my garage and mess around with old cars and old motorcycles and restore things is really gives me the ability to sort of focus on something for hours at a time and sort of get lost. And that's a big stress reliever for me.
Steve Byrne asks, are you able to relax and enjoy any part of a live Metallica show as a fan? Is there a moment where you know that there's not a patch you have to worry about for 3 minutes where you can just take it in, or are you sort of over all that?
I'm pretty focused the whole time on what has to happen next.
Sure.
There's a lot of guitar changes. There's a lot of things going on, especially outdoors. You could be trying to dodge the rain. There's not a lot of time for that. There's occasions near the end of the set where you can kind of, feel a little bit relieved that everything's gone really well up to that point.
Is there anything you sort of start putting away when you know it's the last song for a particular guitar? Or is there anything you do kind of towards the last tune that expedites the loadout process?
Yeah, just stuff like getting rid of the drinks and things that James isn't going to use anymore. Just starting to clean up back there. I can put my tuner away during Enter Sandman and just start kind of cleaning up a little bit. I try and be as efficient as possible. When you're setting this stuff up and taking it down every day, you don't really dig in too hard. You sort of set up to tear down, as we say.
Absolutely.
But yeah, towards the end of the set, if James is done using something, then I'll try and put it away, because it's pretty much chaos as soon as the show's over and everybody's trying to load out at the same time.
Steve also asked, if you were able to pick a song on the set list, what would it be?
Oh boy. I'll have to think about that for a second. It's because, and the other reason I'm hesitant is because it changes. Us sort of playing Outlaw Torn recently. Yeah, it sort of gets stuck in in your sort of the front part of your brain, right? In the RAM memory, so to speak, and so it can kind of change. There's songs that we play every night, and then there's songs that are mixed in there,
right? And
some are kind of a pain. Some are, like No Leaf Clover goes by so quickly. And I really have to be on top of that one. I usually just have my notes out just in case.
So that's one you see on the list where you're like, okay, I need this one. I
really got to pay attention to what's going on here.
Because of the patch changes?
Yeah, correct.
Okay,
yeah.
Wow. Because it goes from clean to heavy. And
yeah.
Okay.
There's not a lot of lead-ins. And the whole song isn't very long. And so it goes by really quickly. It's pretty fun. Once it's over, but
it's fun when it's over.
Yeah, well,
that's like me at the end of every gig. Every time I get back on the bus, I'm like, now I'm having fun because it's done.
Well, yeah, it's a little like a roller coaster. You don't really kind of realize you're having fun until it's over, and
totally.
You're like, wow, what happened?
Totally. I mean, I imagine after all these years, you must feel pretty confident, even when you have to pull notes out for a rotating song, that you feel pretty good about it all. You're on top of it, but you got to feel pretty smooth about some of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's for the most part. There's not that too often anymore where they drag out some song that's going to be really difficult. We actually added a couple of Saint Anger songs on this last Euro tour,
right?
And we were all like, "Oh boy, oh man, we got to dig these C-sharp guitars out. And we got to think about this, and we got to think about that." And it keeps it interesting too.
Yeah, Charlotte Blythe actually asked something. She said, "Is there a song you dread in the set because of the tuning?" I mean, I imagine that would be the Saint Anger stuff, maybe.
I think it's not the actual tuning. The only time is when we play something that we don't play that often that I really have to nail with the switching.
Right.
More than anything is the thing that would concern me the most.
Victor Goni asks, how do you stay healthy and in shape on the hard routine of touring?
Well, the days are very long, so you're on your feet for most of the day, and after you've already worked a 10-hour day, then that's when the show starts. So you have to sort of mind your energy. And I don't really go out. I don't party anymore, on the days off and stuff like that. So it's about getting a rest on the days off. Sometimes I'll hit the gym, not as much as I should, just to keep this, the cardio and stuff up. But
Do you guys travel with a like a portable gym, Sitch, or like one of the trucks turns into a gym or anything like that?
no, we have Lars has a treadmill because he's usually running. That kind of keeps him going and in shape. But you just generally hit the hotel thing, and during the work days, I don't have a lot of time anyway to think about going out running, or which I just can't do anyway.
Right.
Or lifting weights or something. I've been doing some rehab for my shoulder, but that's just like stretches and bands and things. But just trying to mind what you eat, and really stress management is a big thing. It can really take its toll on you if you're not careful, or you're not being mindful of your mental state, I guess. Stress shows up in weird ways. And when you're in different countries and you're dealing with, people that don't do big shows often, like promoters or whatever, or you're out stuck in a field and you can't get stuff you might need, or you're running out of laundry and all of these other things, you still have to find a way to sort of let those stresses go. And I think some people innately do that better than others, but when you're away from home, it's always there's always a certain amount of stress there that you can't ignore.
Yeah, it's hard to explain that to people. Because it's not only physical health; there's like a mental health thing you have to maintain while you're gone. Away from your family. So, other than obviously James is your boss, but do you guys have a head production manager or stage manager that you could defer to if you're in a venue or have a promoter that's not as experienced and there's some problems with power or whatever? Who's the production manager?
We call him Lug. His name is John Zients.
Lug.
And Lug. And all these production managers, they all have this sort of a different style.
Yeah.
And Lug is great because he's very straightforward and very matter of fact. And you have to have someone in that position that can explain things to the band when things aren't right or perfect.
Right. And
sometimes those things just are part of where you're at that day or what the extenuating circumstances are. It's not always going to be perfect. And he's pretty good to disseminate that information. I need very little compared to what other people need, I think. If I have my space and just the power that I need and my equipment, then I can pretty much do anything. As long as I'm not underwater, that's helpful.
Or hurting your shoulder, which you just mentioned. And we have a guy ask about that. He says, how did the guys in the band react to your onstage accident in Lisbon? As James has been hurt on stage, I'm interested in how supportive he was. Hope your shoulder's healing well.
Thanks for that. And I just remember looking up at the stars, like thinking something is really wrong with my arm as I was laying there. And then it's almost like a movie scene where in the camera shot is Kirk's face, and he's like, "Stay down, bro. Stay down, bro."
He said, "Stay down, like don't move."
Yeah. And then I tried to get up, and he's like, "No, stay down, bro. Stay down, bro. Help's coming." He came running over right away. He was right there.
That's awesome.
I don't remember a whole lot about it. So
what happened? Did you go right to a hospital, or you did the changes from backstage, but you didn't run out any guitars? Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, I was like, I thought, I can handle this. I can get through this show. Because the switching is the tricky part, and we had one of our stage guys, Dewey, who plays some bass and has done a little bit of everything. So I was kind of telling him which guitar to grab next, and he was tuning stuff up. It worked out. But as I stood there, I think there was still probably about an hour and a half of the show left.
Right.
My shoulder just like hurt more and more, and it started to cramp up. But it just seemed like it won't be that long until the show's over. I'll be all right. And then the more it went on, I was like, oh my God, this hurts. I should have gone to the hospital. But it just seemed like I could make it through it. And, if we could just make the show go and get through it, then we can deal with it later.
Lou Delia asks, was there ever a time that you thought a particular guitar would be better for a song than what James decided to play?
No, not really. We sort of have a understanding as to kind of what I'm going to give him for certain vibe kind of songs. We have like the Flying V's are kind of for anything that's kind of fast and thrashy.
Right.
We have to make a couple of concessions sometimes when two songs are back to back. I might use two different guitars for those songs if they were separate. But since they're together, I have to consider, can he play both of those songs well on this guitar? And he can play them all on whatever guitar, but some have a certain earlier vibe, and then there's something like a song like Rome. I want to kind of have the Les Paul shaped guitar on them.
Right.
There's some of the earlier stuff. You're like, yeah, this is definitely an Explorer shape or Snakebite shaped kind of song. If something's different or changes, or I need to give him a different guitar, he's fine with it. He doesn't second guess me. There's times where I'll ask him, hey, what do you want to play for this and this? And we'll talk about it and figure it out. It's not that big a deal.
It's been pretty fun to see him playing a Les Paul with a Bigsby on it. That's kind of a new thing these last.
Yeah, the actual Bigsby mechanism is locked down.
Yeah, I saw that.
Still a pain in the butt to restring it and to keep it in tune until it's been played in.
I don't know if you're familiar, Chad, with this thing called Vibromate that's for Bigsby's.
I just saw that 2 days ago.
Yeah, I put them on all my guitars. It makes that process soup. I mean, it just makes it exactly as if you were pulling the strings through like a Strat or a Tele.
Yeah, I just became aware of that thing, so I'm not sure if maybe I'll get one to check it out. James isn't too much into like gadgety kind of things.
Sure.
So whether I use it or not, I'm not sure.
Do you restring all of his guitars every show?
That is probably the most common question I get.
Yeah.
There are a couple of guitars that get new strings for every show, like the Ken Lawrence, for instance. I was doing the Vulture that he starts the show with. I was kind of doing that one every day for a while, just because it's the first song out of the gate, and you don't want to have a broken string right at the top of the show. So I was kind of changing strings a lot on that. Nowadays, we are using these new strings by Ernie Ball that are really have been really, really solid. And I think they're actually going to release those.
Oh, cool.
So keep an eye out for that. Anyway, but basically I get them on a kind of a rotation. If there's one guitar that gets one song per night, then it goes about 3 shows. Or if the weather's bad and the strings start to feel like a little kind of corroded or dull, then I just change them so they don't all get new strings every show.
Lauren Singh asks, we all know what kinds of guitars James likes. As a guitar tech and guru yourself, what kind of guitars do you personally like?
I'm a fan of the SG, and I've kind of been looking for an old one lately, but it just goes all the way back to, Angus Young and, my childhood and listening to that stuff. And it's pretty, I always kind of get a little excited when somebody's playing an SG. The Les Paul is just a solid, hard to beat guitar. That shape and the scale of the fretboard and everything as far as tuning and all of that. It's really hard to beat. The Explorer shaped guitars they're just very solid and sturdy. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of wood there, so you can get a lot of tone out of them. But if it were me, I guess if I was to sit down and play a guitar, I would like to play an SG.
Mike Dorbeck asks, what other artists are you into? What's some of your favorite music?
I like a lot of different stuff. I like that there's a new Tool record out. I listen to real old country. I listen to any sort of singer-songwriter stuff. I've been checking out Sturgill Simpson lately. Anything that's real honest. My daughter really likes Billie Eilish.
Yep.
And so I'm forced to listen to a lot of different things, and it's just nice when you can hear somebody and they're just honest about what they're doing. I mean, a good song is a good song. I grew up with a lot of, the classic rock, Led Zeppelin and all that stuff. A lot of that stuff's still pretty undeniable, but anything bluesy, anything kind of funky.
If you like Sturgill, you'll definitely, if you haven't already checked out, like Jason Isbell, Chris Stapleton.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All those guys. Those guys are good.
Yeah.
I won't say the stuff that I don't like, but
Sure.
I just like a lot of different stuff. I've been getting into some kind of sort of chill or spaced out stuff that I'll listen to after show at night when I lay down in the bunk, just something to like relax me.
Honestly, the new Tool record's pretty good for that.
Yeah, I've heard a couple things, but I haven't downloaded the whole thing yet.
All right, we got a few more. I don't want to take up too much of your time. Kat Anchor says, I just want to say thanks and let you know that you're appreciated, which is nice.
Thank you.
She says, it's always great to watch you, Justin, Zach, and Jimmy get everything set up before the shows. Her question is, have you noticed a difference in crowd reaction between European and U.S. audiences? Because that's kind of a myth that perhaps you can dispel, that European crowds seem to be more vocal, more into the shows. Has that been your experience?
It all depends on the city. I don't think there's a delineation between one like continent as a whole. There are places that have more of a reputation for being loud and crazy. There's places in the States that one town could be 150 miles away from another town, and the crowd reaction could be totally different. And I think some people are just a little bit more stoic than others, and sometimes there's circumstances of the venue, or it might seem like the crowd wasn't very loud, but it's just that you're outdoors and you've been playing indoors recently. But there's certain cities that are definitely the crowds are just insane. I find that in South America sometimes, and you'd be surprised. Some places really surprise you.
What are you like at a show? Are you kind of a arms folded in the back, taking it all in kind of dude? Are you up front with people? What's your vibe?
I don't go to a lot of shows.
Yeah.
To be honest, I'm not really starved for entertainment when I get home.
Yeah.
But when I do, if I find myself at a show, I like to just sort of, kind of hang out in the back and just sort of watch what's going on.
Yeah.
I will try not to miss any chance to watch Billy Gibbons play guitar. And in that instance, I would try and sort of be up front somewhere so I could kind of watch what's going on. But I always kind of enjoy watching other people lose their mind in the audience, and I'm a bit more kind of just hanging out watching.
Are you in charge of when the band has a guest like Billy Gibbons, or when Lemmy was around, or at the 30th anniversary gigs when 1 million people came up and guested? Are you sort of in charge of all that backline stuff too?
We're there to help. So whatever somebody brings, if somebody just brings a guitar and says, "Hey man, where do I plug in?" then we try and give them somewhere to plug in.
Right.
Like I think Zach used to order a bunch of specific stuff for when Lemmy was going to come out. His head and particular head and cabinets and have that stuff set up for him, because we knew he was just going to walk in with a bass guitar and want to plug into something. That was, that's a courtesy to him.
Mm-hmm.
We don't often have a lot of, we don't have guests as much as other bands that I've worked for.
Right.
So there has to be a little bit of a conversation in the beginning, and if we need to rent an amp or something, because we don't just have extra amps sitting around now.
Right.
That we need to, and I'm happy to take care of whomever walks in. I'll grab your guitar, I'll tune it. If something needs to be fixed, we're going to take care of it, just to make sure that everybody looks good.
Well, it's really nice to know that when Metallica asked me to come on tour with them,
I'm your guy.
that you'll be my guy.
Just come bring me your stuff and tell me what you want, and we'll do it.
Okay, I've got 2 more quick things before we split and
Yep.
say goodbye. Andy Brown asked, how is S&M2 different for you? And we don't have to, I mean, I'm sure we could talk for a whole episode about that, but a gig like that, it's super specialized, and obviously it's the first gig in that arena, all the fanfare around it. What was different for you in general about a day like that to get ready for that gig?
I think maybe the addition of, 84 or 85 extra musicians.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We were trying to do what we do normally, but make space for all of these other people. And it's a bit of a hard thing to do. But we were all very interested in just making it work and making it just so that they could just play. And I don't know how to describe it. It's a very different day, and
Yeah.
it was very stressful at first because the band had a lot of nerves and stuff going into it, and
course.
everyone wants it to be right and perfect, and it's just hard to get over that. The second show was far more laid back as far as we could, the general vibe. We'd already been through this once, so we were like, okay, let's go into this one and we could have a little bit more fun. It adds, anytime you add all the extra recording and the camera shoots and all of that stuff, it adds a little bit of pressure. I try and let other people take that pressure on. I like to just kind of be the guy that stays loose and, calm, and nobody's getting excited here. It's just what we normally do, keep it normal.
Totally. And I'm sure whoever was overseeing that part of it, the pressure of it's going to be an album, it's going to be a film, they were probably able to say after night one, look, dudes, we got like 85% of what we needed. So now let's just have fun,
Yeah, and we had the ability to go back and redo a couple songs the second night if they didn't go very well, or there was something happened, or there was feedback, or who knows what, you know what I mean? There's just so many more working parts to a song when you add that many people, that it's that much more difficult to make sure that it was really good. And, there's no rules really. There's, if you need to stop the show and fix something, it's just what you do. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be this perfectly presented thing in order for it to be successful.
There's been a lot said about the never-ending Memory Remains singing on night two. I'm interested to see if that'll make it into the film. My question for you, and you said you don't know as much coming up. You said they ask diehards more than you. Mm-hmm. The S&M2 bomb was dropped on all of us, even for me as a quote-unquote insider, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. It was just like a bomb dropped in March. How long ago did you know that this show was coming down the pike?
I don't remember. It was probably around the same time.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Things kind of happened quickly in Metallica world. I'm sure they had been thinking about it for a while, but in this case where it's an anniversary 20 years later thing, it's not something you can push off till next year, because then it's not the same. It's not the anniversary anymore.
Absolutely.
So it as it comes down the pike, we're sort of, people let us know when it's time to start thinking about stuff, and not usually before that.
Our last question from Chris Yergis is, from your perspective, what is it about Metallica that keeps them relevant all these years?
They're one of these bands that you don't see just making the summer run of shows, doing the, hey, these are all our old songs, you remember us kind of thing. And I think it's the fact that they still work so hard to write new material and to be relevant, and to not just become like the tribute band of their own music.
Right.
They really have a passion for their kind of music. And I think the fact that they were pioneers in the genre, I think they have to kind of carry that on, and they're not afraid to evolve, as we've seen over different records, and they just enjoy making music, and they like for there to be new stuff out there. They really enjoy playing new stuff. They would honestly just, I think, become a little bit bored if they were just playing the first three records over and over again. Right. It doesn't really give you too much reason to get up out of bed and go do something new. But I think that just that they all try, they like have high expectations for themselves and for the people that are around them. and that they really enjoy making new music. It just shows. And I mean, you look at the last record, it's just a lot of great songs on there, especially after listening to them now for a couple years straight. You still, one comes up and you're like, oh yeah, that's right, that is a really good song, isn't it? They have such a large catalog to pull from, yet they still really want to make new music.
Do you have a favorite Metallica album or song?
I think, Master of Puppets was the first like full-length album thing that when I was younger, I wasn't just like interested in a single or the couple of popular songs that were off of really any album at the time. I heard Kill 'Em All in the back of the bus, going to school and going to hockey practice, and that'll always probably be my favorite. Just because it was like, wow, what is this? But probably, I don't know, Master of Puppets and Justice for All was another one where it was like these really long songs that had a lot of different parts, and it was really different.
Right.
I tune into those a little bit when I think about the old stuff.
Well, Chad, man, you are an invaluable part, as far as I'm concerned, of bringing our favorite band to us live and elsewhere. And thank you so much for being so generous with your time and information. And I hope we get to chat again soon, man.
Anytime.
Master!
What a great guy. You did a good job. He threw out a lot more information and knowledge than I expected originally. I think, and a lot of it was your direction in conducting the interview, taken in cool directions that just brought out random stories that weren't just typical stuff. I don't know. I liked a lot of his insight into things, and hopefully, for those of you guys that were listening, it's even outside of Metallica, it's just a good insight to what goes on behind the scenes with these guys and setting up shows of this magnitude down to club shows and all the stuff in between.
Yep. And what I like a lot about these interviews is giving our patrons an opportunity to ask our guests questions, you know, whether it's Chad Z or Jay Weinberg, Ray Burton. So, if you dig the show, if you think the show has value, this Metallica content that we work hard to deliver every week, do consider getting on board with the Patreon train. You could give $1 a month, $5 a month, whatever makes the most sense. Generally, it's a couple of cups of coffee.
Couple of cups of coffee.
Say that 30,000 times.
A couple with a cup of coffee.
And we really appreciate the support. It really goes a long way into justifying the time and the work that we put in. Plus all the gifts we try to give away. We gave away tickets to S&M2 and Slane Castle and box sets and all that fun stuff. So go get on the ride. At the very minimum, though, you can leave a positive review on iTunes.
That's right.
If you haven't already, why not?
Why haven't you done that? It's so easy.
We're on the socials. You can go follow us there. We have fun on Twitter and Instagram, occasionally on Facebook.
Yeah.
And I guess without that, we'll just go ahead and say peace.
Adios.
If you were our advisor, what would you say? Then I would say delete that.